Welcome back to Practical AutoCAD and Inventor. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your very own custom line types from scratch. Whether it's dashed, dotted, or even text or shape embedded line types, you'll be able to customize your drawings just the way you like. And the best part, it's easier than you think. By the end of this video, you'll be able to design and load your own custom line types. So let's get started. Having the ability to create custom line types will change the way you use AutoCAD and open up a lot more possibilities for you. In this video, we're going to look at two different things. We'll look at creating line type definitions in this video, and then in the next video, we'll create custom line types that use fonts and shape patterns. But we're going to separate those into two separate videos so that this one doesn't get too long. About line types. Line types are stored in the AutoCAD.lin files found in the support folder. There are actually two different line type files that you could get. There's the AutoCAD.lin, and then there's also AutoCAD.iso.lin. AutoCAD, the AutoCAD.lin file is for imperial line types, and the ISO is for line types that are in millimeters. And either way, both of those come with several simple and complex line types that we're going to look at here in just a few minutes. And if you need to get to that folder, it's shown, you can find it in the deep down in the bowels of your computer. You can follow that, or you can just go to Windows Explorer and look for it that way. So a line type file is simply a text file that contains definitions of simple and complex line types. So to create or modify those line type definitions, you're going to want to either edit the LIN file using a text editor such as Notepad, or you can create your own, which I will show you how to do here in this video. After you create that line type file, you're going to have to load that line type so that you can use it. This is a snip of the AutoCAD line type file, and we're going to take a look at it in a little bit more depth here in a minute. You can see at the top that there are several lines of comments telling you a little bit about it, and then the lines themselves, or the line type definitions, follow. Each line type definition consists of just two lines of text. The first line is the title and the description, and then the second line has the actual pin down, pin up assignments, and like I said, we're going to go through how to do that. If I were to switch right now to that actual file, here I am looking at it, and you'll see that the line types here are just listed. So there's border, border 2, and border x2. The difference between any of these where you see the name 2, and name x2 is just the sizes of the lengths of the down and up pin segments. For example, in the border line type, the first down pin segment has a distance of 1/2 of an inch. In border 2, it's 1/4 of an inch. And then in border x2, meaning it's twice as big as the original, it's actually 1 inch. And then if you look at the rest of these numbers, you'll see that they're all the same. If we scroll down a little bit through this, you'll see that these are the ISO files that are meant for millimeters applications. So here you'll see in this AutoCAD ISO 8W100, the down pin segment is 24 millimeters, which is nearly an inch long. And then it's up for about 1/8 of an inch, and then down for about 1/4, and then up for 1/8, and it goes over and over again. Then there are complex line types that we're going to go over in the next video. And then finally at the bottom, if you want to define your own line types, one of the ways you can do it is you can just come right down here to the bottom of this file, and you can add your own line types right here. That way, when you go to load the line types, it'll automatically see them. You won't have to load a separate file or anything like that. Now, coming back to here, line type basics. A line type is simply a repeating pattern of dashes, dots, blank spaces, text, and shape files. Those different elements can be displayed either in a line or on a curve, or in the case of like a polyline, both. When you want to load your line types, you're going to use either the Layer Properties Manager or the Line Type Manager using the Line Type command. And again, those two different line types are available. Again, the ISO one is for stuff that's going to be plotted in millimeters. One other thing to consider is you can control the line type scale both globally for all objects and explicitly for each object. The line type scale determines how many times the pattern will be iterated in a distance, a specific unit of distance. So you can come in and you can change that so that, for example, if I make the line type scale bigger, that makes my dashes longer, it makes my spaces longer, and it scales them all up by whatever number I make. If I make it smaller, it allows more units in that same amount of area. You can access the line type scale by typing in line type, or if I go to AutoCAD, I can type in line type here, and line type, and if I hit the, well, that's already out. If I hit the Show Details button, it shows me my global line type for everything that I'm creating and the current object scale. So if I've got one selected, it will give me the current object scale there. It is recommended that you always leave both of these at 1, at a value of 1, and then if you need to change something, generally you're going to change them one at a time using the Properties dialog box. In most, let's see, the smaller the scale factor, the more repetitions the pattern are generated per drawing unit, and in most cases, like I said, you'll want to leave that global scale factor set to 1. So creating line types. Like I said earlier, you can either create those line types and add them to the bottom of the LIN file, or you can create your own. Whether you decide to do that is up to you. I like to have them on separate files. That way, if I want to share it with somebody, I can simply send them the one line type that I want them to have. I don't have to send them the entire acad.lin file and then have extra versions of those laying around. So simple line types consist of 2 lines of code. The first line gives the name and the description of the line type, and then the second line is the mathematical code that the program actually reads to draw the line. Anytime you want to insert a comment, you can do so by putting a semicolon at the beginning of your comment. And all elements are separated by commas, meaning that this is a comma delimited file. You have to be careful with line types because you cannot have extra spaces in there. Even though it's comma delimited, extra spaces in your line type code can make things not work properly. So if we look at a simple one, for example, the border one, line 1 is the title, okay, and it gives me the title and the description. So your format is the asterisk, the line type name, and then the description. As far as the line type name goes, I recommend that you always give that first line type name in all capital letters, just so that you match what AutoCAD does with theirs. And then the description is usually the name again and then a graphical description, just using the ASCII characters like dashes and dots and spaces to make it look approximately like what your line is going to look like. If you decide to omit the description for whatever reason, you don't need to put the comma after the title. You can just go on to the next onto the next line. One thing to remember is that your description cannot exceed 47 characters. Well, it can exceed 47 characters, but the 48th can, any other character that you have will simply be truncated, cut off, and not displayed. So the second line has several elements, the first one being the alignment code A. What the alignment code A does is it tells the computer how to split up the first down pin segment. You know that if you draw a line that has dashes and dots and spaces, it has to get to a certain length, and then once you get to that certain length, it kind of evens it out so that the two ends are the same, and that's what alignment code A does. AutoCAD only supports alignment code A, which guarantees that the endpoints of the lines and arcs start and stop with a dash, not with an up pin segment. You have to specify the A-type alignment by entering A in the alignment field. So it's just A and then comma. After that, you have your pattern descriptors. The Positive numbers represent pen down. The pen is moving and it's putting ink on the page. A negative number represents pen up, meaning the pen is moving but it's not putting ink on the page. And then a 0 draws a dot. You can have up to 12 dash length specifications per line type, as long as they fit within an 80 character line on the .lin file. You got to make sure that you don't have extras. A couple other things are that you only have to define the line pattern once. So you're going to figure out where it starts and where it ends, and you just have to do one repetition. The command will automatically repeat that definition over and over again. So again, you only need one repetition of the line type. The A type alignment, which is what AutoCAD requires, that you have a dash length of 0 or greater for that first segment. So you can start with a dot, or you can start with a down pin segment of some other distance, but you cannot start with an up pin segment. If you do, your line won't quite perform the way it's supposed to when you actually draw it. For arcs, the pattern is adjusted so that the dashes are drawn at the endpoints. And for circles and arcs, or other objects with no endpoints, the dash dot sequence is adjusted to provide a reasonable display. Reasonable meaning that it does its best to estimate and maintain the numbers that you have given it in the code. A couple other things to consider is this pline gen. If you're doing polylines, and this only applies to polylines, pline gen controls how the line type patterns are generated around the vertices of 2D polylines. The default value of 0 resets the line at each vertex, and 1 draws the line type continuously from one to the other, disregarding those vertices. So pline gen is especially useful when you're converting polylines to like fit or spline. For example, on this example here, you'll see that I've got polylines that have, it's a phantom line and it stops here and then starts here, right? And so it only gives me the dashes on the segments that are long enough to have dashes, and no dashes will be generated on the short ends here. If I change polyline gen to a value of 1 though, you'll see that it starts at the end, starts at one point, ends at the other point, and allows those dashes to be distributed even around different corners. I could even end up with corners like this one and this one, where there are no corners, which can make it a little bit funky. But again, where this is really handy is when I've got a polyline that I've converted to a spline. Now I can come in and I can have those dashes evenly spaced, even though the object wouldn't normally have it. And this one here, because when I convert this to a spline, the polyline to a spline, there's so many breaks that it never allows that polyline to have that amount. Two ways to adjust the polyline generation is you can type in pline gen at the command line and change it to 1, or you can select the polyline and use the change properties dialog box to change the polyline generation from 0 to 1. Next, let's look at actually creating some line types in AutoCAD. So I'm going to go to AutoCAD here, and I'm also going to open up my notepad. So if I go to notepad, you'll see that I've got an empty notepad here. I recommend that you use Notepad instead of something like Microsoft Word, because Microsoft Word will sometimes it'll include formatting characters and that kind of stuff that could interfere with the actual code. But if you use something like Notepad, it's just ASCII text. There's not going to be any other formatting characters. Now I'm going to do a simple line that is very easy. It's just going to have dashes and dots. It's not going to have any text or anything in it. And I'm just going to draw it out here so you know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to zoom in and I'll say, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line and I want my down pin segment to be 1.5 inches. And then I want it to have a space of, let's say, 1/4 of an inch with another dash of 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to put another space And I'm going to put a donut. I'm going to actually draw it as a donut so that you can see it. If I just put well, I'll use a point. If I use a point, I'm going to say, okay, I want to point another 1/4 of an inch over, and then I want to, to basically mirror this. So I'm going to say, let's mirror this around that node like this. And there we go. So I've got long dash, space, short dash, space, dot, space, short dash, space, and then it starts over again. So if I were to, copy this, for example, it's going to end up looking something like this. So what I suggest you do when you want to create your own line type is to first draw it out so that you have a good understanding of what the line is going to look like. So again, I've got 1.5 inches, a space of 1/8 or 1/4, a down pin for 1/4, a space of 1/4, a dot, a space of 1/4, a down pin for 1/4, a space of 1/4, and then it starts over. So this is the start of my definition. This is the end of my definition, and then it repeats, and it repeats, and it repeats. For the sake of calling this something, I'm going to call it first line. So when we write our code, the first element has to be, well, I'll add a comment. I will say comment. The semicolon tells the computer, hey, this is going to be a comment, so you can ignore this. And I'm going to say sample line type for demonstration purposes. Okay. And then the line type itself has to start with a star. So I'll put the asterisk in, and then I'm going to give it the name first line. Okay, that's the name of the line type that I'm creating. And then I'll put a comma, and then I'm going to give it a description. So it's usually, if I'm following what AutoCAD does, I'll simply type first line again, and then I'll put a graphical description, and I'll just use like underscores and dots in order to get this. Okay, so that's what I've got. And you can do it as many times as you want, but I think that's going to be sufficient for what I need. So that's all you need. You've got the star telling the program, here comes a new line type, the actual title of the line type, followed by a comma, and then the description. And I've got the name of it and the graphical description. After that, you're going to press enter to get to the second line, and now's where we put in all of our descriptors. So I'll say, okay, my first descriptor has to be the alignment code A. And again, that tells it how to treat the endpoints of the line, the end down pin segments, followed by a comma, and then a positive number for my first segment that's going to be 1.5 inches. So down pin, meaning it's a positive number, it's adding ink to the paper, 1.5 inches down, comma. Then I've got the pin's going to move, but it's going to be up off the paper, so that'll be negative for 1/4 of an inch, comma. And then it's going to be down for 1/4 of an inch, adding that next little dash. So again, 0.25, it's a positive number, it's adding ink to the paper, comma, and then again up for 1/4 of an inch, so negative 0.25, comma, and then we have our dot, 0, okay, remember the 0 makes a dot, comma, then we're up for 1/4, negative 0.25, comma, and then down for another 1/4, 0.25, comma, and then finally we're up for one more 1/4, 0.25. And I'll press enter. So I've got an empty line space at the end here, and I'm just going to count. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different definitions. And if I look here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It starts with a down pin segment, positive number. It ends with an up pin segment, negative number. Everything looks perfect. So now all I have to do is save this line type and load it. So important, when you're using Notepad, it wants to save as a text file. I have to change that. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, let's save this. And it asks me where I want to save it. I'm going to let it save it in my downloads folder. I don't need to change that. But I'm going to change the type of document from text to all files. And then I'm going to give it the line type that I want. So I'll say first line .lin. Now I'm adding the extension here, .lin. You have to do that. Otherwise it won't give it an extension at all. And the name that I give it here, first line, needs to match this name right here, first line. Okay, so make sure that you've spelled those the same. Now I can choose save, and I'm ready to go. I'm going to minimize this. And now if I want to load that line type, there's two ways I can do it. I can do it either through the Layer Properties Manager, or I can go to the Linetype command. I'll do it through Layers. So if I go to the Layers and I go to Linetype here, if I click on Continuous, it asks me to select the line type that I want. Of course, this one that I just created, it's not loaded, so I'll go to Load. And then if I were to go through this list, it's only going to show me the ones that are in the AutoCAD.lin file. Well, that's not what I want. So I'll click File right here, and I'll browse to my downloads, and there it is, firstline.lin. I can open that. You'll see that here's the title that I gave it and the description that I gave it. I'll select it here and say OK, and I'll set that current in my current layer. So now it's my layer 0 has that line type first line. It's ready to go. If I were to come in here and now draw it, if I were to come in here and make it exactly the same length as this one, you'll see that it looks exactly the same. So it's got down pin for 1.5 inches, up for 1/4, down for 1/4, up for 1/4, dot, up for 1/4, down for 1/4, up for 1/4, and then it repeats. If I were to make this line longer or shorter, you'll see what happens is it changes the lengths of the outside segments so that it can all fit. And that's what the A-type alignment does. If I make it shorter than the definition itself, it shows it all as one line, okay? And if I want to actually display that, that's when you can go in and you can use your line type scale, okay? So if I select this, for example, select that line type, and I go to the Properties tool palette, I can scroll down to the bottom, and we can, oh, not at the bottom, right here where it says line type scale, you'll see that I can change that line type scale to something like 0.5, which now allows it to have all of those dashes because now they're all half of the length of the original. So this concludes the first video on how to create simple line types. The second video that we create will have complex line types that include text and shapes.